My name is Emily. I'm 20 years old and I'm going to be sharing my testimony. The reason that I'm sharing my testimony is because in Revelation 12:11, I believe it says that we overcome him, Satan, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. I have hope and I'm sharing my testimony because I want others to know that they can have hope too amidst really terrible and unfortunate circumstances. I grew up in a Christian home like many stories start. I grew up believing in God, going to church, doing all the right things, like doing right from wrong, having a very cemented idea of what right and wrong was. And I always wanted to follow God, but I didn't really ever know how. The foundation that I started with growing up was very shaky. I believed a lot of lies about myself that entered through circumstances that really shaped and affected my life. I developed seizures at the age of 4, and that continued for 7 years. So I was in and out of hospitals, doctor visits, taking different types of medication. And before the age of kindergarten is really crazy, so I kind of started believing that there was something wrong with me, that I was different from other kids, so it affected me and the connections I made with them. As time went on, I struggled in school. I had trouble focusing, doing other things because I was just so overwhelmed with all the emotions and anxiety and struggles that having seizures brought in medicine and all these different things, and I missed school and I just didn't really have a normal life. I just grew up in a home with a lot of insecurity and a lot of fear. I had nightmares, like consistent nightmares. They were never good dreams. They were always about like being stabbed, car accidents, drowning, being chased, just like consistently the theme of fear and just being in helpless situations that I couldn't do anything about. I also would be in dreams where I'd be paralyzed and I couldn't get out of them. And I just had trouble sleeping, and I went through phases where I would sleep really well and then I wouldn't sleep at all, and it just made school hard, and just like a lot of little things that kind of came together in like a perfect mess and just made living like as a child really hard. And through other circumstances and just hard situations, the lies that I believed about myself and that I believed about God just got deeper, and they continued to build and grow and become stronger. And so throughout my teenage years, I also continued to struggle in school. Probably around 7th or 6th grade, or maybe before, I grew out of my seizures, so like they didn't really affect my life as much anymore, but I still had like all the emotions that came with it. I still wasn't really making friends. I got bullied in school, and that was really difficult. And I also moved from school to school, not like a bunch of times, but I had 3 different school experiences, so I had to make different friends, different teachers, different ways of learning. It was just very difficult to adjust to all the changes that were happening in my life. As I grew older, I started developing depression, which is it's something that runs like rampant in my family. It's just a way of living. I was used to it, all the emotions. Like I was very educated on mental health, and I accepted early on that I would just have to deal with severe depression and anxiety, and that I would have to learn how to cope and live with it. So I developed coping skills and mechanisms that weren't healthy, and it made me really numb because I was just used to all these terrible things happening and used to all the thoughts and like the weight of depression and helplessness. And through my teenage years, that just kind of got worse with different situations. I became suicidal, but not to the point where I was very serious about it. It was just ideation. Like I didn't want to be here. I didn't have a relationship with God that I really, really desired. I didn't know how to start, and I just didn't know like what life had for me. Like I already accepted that I'd be struggling the rest of my life, so I didn't really think about dreams and goals that I had. I just kind of was like, whatever, like I'm just in this world surviving. There's really no point in being here. I had like one really good friend that we had like a 6-year age gap, and I personally believe that God brought her into my life to keep me on this earth, because looking back, she got me through the worst years of my life, and I believe that if I did not have her, I would have ended my life. She became an idol because I wasn't close enough to God, and so she was like my savior because she just met all my needs. But there was a time later on, a few years down the road, where our relationship kind of took a different turn. We're still really good friends. She couldn't be there, and we kind of grew away from that like constant like communication, and that really affected me and put me in a really hopeless state. And so there was just a time in my life where like as I was getting closer to graduating, a lot of things just fell through, and I became very hopeless, and I wanted to get out. I grew up in church, but I never felt that I was like connected with anyone. I never felt like I belonged. I tried to do all the things and I just felt really empty. I felt like I was missing God and I didn't really know how to reach him. I went through phases in my life where I would try to be good for a week. Like I wouldn't sin, I wouldn't get mad at anyone, like I would just be good. And I would fail because I'm human, like it doesn't work that way. And I would get frustrated and I would stop reading and I would stop praying and I was like, God, like you don't see me, you don't care about me. Like I've prayed to you a million times. These circumstances aren't changing. Like you don't care about me. And so I remember specifically a moment in time where I was younger that I like verbally spoke out. Like I was angry at God and I was like, you have abandoned me, like you don't see me, you don't care about me. And that really just kind of like fell on me and surrounded me and cemented that in my mind, and it really affected me, and I didn't really understand how that really changed things for me. And I continued to believe it because when we speak things out verbally, we're speaking things over ourselves, and I was constantly speaking like abandonment, rejection, death over myself all the time, and I was just cursing myself, which I didn't realize until later, and I became educated about it. But also one more thing I'll add is that like I had like a spirit of death. Like obviously with the suicide and depression, I was always thinking about death. Like I wouldn't have done anything, but I was like, when I would drive to work or whatever, I would have intrusive thoughts like, what if I just did it? What if I just went into this ditch? What if this happened? Like daydreams, like dreams about just like being hurt, being killed, and like I was so passive I couldn't hurt myself, but I just wanted to be the victim of death, so I wouldn't have to face like committing suicide and possibly going to hell. And I think that really kept me here is because I did not want to die. I wanted the pain to be gone, but I did not want to die without knowing who God was. Like my desire for God was greater than my hopelessness, and I didn't realize that until later. So fast forward, I was graduating. I graduated in May or March of 2023, and I kind of became restless. I didn't like the job I was at. I didn't really feel like I was not growing in the church I was at. I loved everyone there, but I just felt like it wasn't for me. I always knew like this is not the church for me, and I don't know how to leave because this is all I know. So I graduated, and at that point I was more depressed, and I was like, okay, my sister lives in Oklahoma. She has a nephew that I adore, and I can help with him, and she's married, and like I need to get away, and I need a safe place to think about all this. Like I need to dig deep and like dissect who I am as a person, what I want out of life, and like I had planned after I graduated to move to Oklahoma somehow. I didn't know the time or whatever. I just knew that like I have a part-time job. I'm not tied to it. Like I don't know what I want to do. It's summer. Like I'll just go out there and hang for a few months. But between the point of graduation and moving, there was a very important thing that happened in my life. So Chet and Phyllis Swearengin, I met them a few times towards the end of 2023. They were a family friend, and they were doing some revival work in Paulding County. I had heard about Deliverance and what they'd been doing, and I really wanted to do it, but I didn't want anyone to know in case it failed because I was literally at I was on the edge, and I told them that. I was like, if this does not work, I'm done, meaning that I was going to take my life because I was just tired of putting hope in things that failed me, and I was so done with all those emotions, and like I didn't think I would get back up again. But they came to our house for supper a few times and gave all of me and my siblings like forgiveness and soul tie worksheets, and I was very curious, and it just clicked with me because a lot of what they were saying with mental health and spiritual and how they collided was just very much resonating with me. So it made me very curious, but I kind of let that sit for a while. I wanted to do it, and I thought about it a lot, but I just didn't have the guts to because I wanted to do it privately in case it failed. So at the end of August 22nd of 2023, I reached out to them. I don't know why. It was almost like an intrusive thing. Maybe it was God prompting me to, but I texted them and sent them my deliverance paperwork, and since that day, things have changed drastically. That was like the biggest step that I could have taken at that time and moment in my life. So we started FaceTiming and like doing deliverance stuff, and I started doing counseling and stuff like that with them, and they began discipling me. And I shared with them, like, if this doesn't work, I'm gone. Like, I don't have many options. And by the way, I want to move to Oklahoma in a few months. And I was like, okay, will you guys still be there for me? And they said yes. So I moved to Oklahoma at the end of October. And between the time that I started working with them before I moved, we were working on the paperwork and all that stuff and forgiveness. And I visited their church and I really liked it. And I was like, okay, I really like this church. I'm not really sure what to do with that right now. But I ended up getting baptized October 4th in a creek. And I didn't really feel any different. I still felt a lot of shame. I was still in a lot of bondage. But that was a leap of faith that I took. And so my moving to Oklahoma kind of transitioned me out of my church. And it was just kind of fit perfectly. It didn't have to be like a huge scene. Like, it just helped me get out of that and start on the path for something better. So I was in Oklahoma for 3 months. I was still really depressed. I was doing discipleship lessons with them. They were mentoring me like all the way there. I was trying to get plugged into a church and just trying to pursue God in all the little ways that I could. So at the end of December, my family came out for Christmas, and I ended up going back with them because I had just felt like it wasn't my place. Like, it helped me a lot with a few things, but I did not want to be there permanently. And I really liked the church I really liked New Hope, the one that I visited, and so I planned on attending when I came back. So the first week of January, I moved to Auburn for a few months and continued to do lessons with them and dig through emotional wounds and do deliverance and all that stuff. And it was helping me in a few ways, but I didn't feel free. Like, I was still in a lot of bondage. I felt like there was a little bit of a weight of depression lifted, but I was still very much like oppressed and just a ton of spiritual warfare. So I got really discouraged because we were working, and I was like, this is not working for me. Like, maybe I just can't be helped. Well, I continued to touch bases with them, and they would mentor me and everything, but it kind of slowed down because I kind of put it on hold for a while because I got distracted. There was just some things that I prayed for, and I had hope in something that meant a lot to me, like just through a situation, and I put my identity in it because like the foundation that I had growing up with, like wanting love and like feeling like God didn't answer my prayers and God isn't good to me and all these things, and like something came in my way, which was a distraction later on. I just put my identity in it, and the 3 months that I was like really engrossed in this thing, I had no depression. Like, I thought God had healed me. I started believing truth about myself. I started rejecting the lies. But like, after that 3 months, it completely fell through and it devastated me. And that was like the start of the lowest point I've ever experienced in my life. Like, that is when, like, I thought as a teenager my depression was bad. Like, this was like all hell broke loose. Like, it was just the most oppression I've ever felt in my life because I put all my hope in this thing and I idolized it. Because of the lack of identity and security that I had in God, I put all my hope in this one thing and it completely crumbled, and that was where my hope was in, and I no longer had that, so I no longer had hope. So I became very suicidal. I started isolating. I was angry at God. I was bitter. I was hanging on by a thread. I became very suicidal and started taking medicine that actually made everything worse. And there was a few nights where I thought about like taking pills and just ending everything, but for some reason, even though it was so painful and I cried myself to sleep and I was like constantly sick to my stomach, and this took me months to get over. Like, even though I had no hope, I had like this smallest little seed of faith that kept me going. And I believe that God was constantly pursuing me, even though he was blocked. Like, Satan, there was just such a spiritual battle going on. I had sleep paralysis, like demonic encounters. Like, there was a battle all the time, but maybe I wasn't like thriving, but I was at least surviving, and that was enough for God to work in me. And so as I kind of was in the healing process of that whole thing, I was still really depressed, but I got better. Like, I started getting better and I started getting my joy back, or at least started like being able to function. towards the end of 2024, in December, a lot of things changed for me, and this is where everything changed. So I had realized that, like, I've grown a lot, I've healed a lot from this situation that just broke me, but I'm still depressed, and I'm tired of living like this. And so I just kind of became to get fed up at this end of December. I mean, I was very depressed. But with the new year coming around, I reminded myself that I have a whole new year, and I'm not going to let it repeat itself. Like, I have to change something. I have to be a different person next year. So there was a few things that really, I think, lifted my depression, and God kind of healed me miraculously. But one of them was that I started being thankful. I forget which verse it is in Psalms. I think it's Psalms. I think it says, a spirit of praise for the spirit of heaviness. And thankfulness is a form of praise because it's worship. And so I just was like, you know what? My life really sucks right now, but like this whole past year, I've gotten to do all these things. Like I've been through a lot, but I've been fighting, and I'm not weak. Like, I've been through all these things and I've made it. And God has been giving me a lot of things that I prayed for years ago. And I have a lot to be thankful for. Like, I have a church family that I'm starting to plug into and all this stuff. And I have people that care about me. And I started becoming thankful and just made a list of all the things that I had. And I just was like, wow, like, you know, I am doing okay. Like, I'm going to be okay, and God has me. I also was at Starbucks one time working on my iPad, and this lady from California that had been staying with family was sitting, and I sat down and started working, and she wrote me a letter and just said, hey, and then she left, and I read it, and she said that she just felt like the moment I walked into Starbucks, she felt like I had like the Spirit of God on me, like I had something about me. And she said she felt that I basically just reminded me that God loved me, and that I was important, and I was going to do something great someday, and that God was going to use me. And that just really lifted me up, because I'm like, God sees me, and that was in the darkest time of my life. Just little things like that, and just helping at church and getting encouragement from people. And one thing which is kind of humorous, but it like actually really changed a lot of things for me, is at the end of December, I went with a few friends to watch the new Lion King movie called Mufasa. And it's kind of funny, but this was a moment where I made a decision, and I didn't realize I did, but I made a conscious decision that I was not going to stay in this pit, because I was done living this cycle. So Mufasa has lions in it, and lions remind me of God. So the whole time watching this movie, the lions were talking and they said things, and it was like I was hearing the voice of God, even though it had nothing to do with him. And I was just like, not even about the movie, I was just thinking about all the things that I'd been through. And I was like, that's it. I was like, I'm done living in this pit. And I'm sick of dealing with depression and just surviving. Like, this year has to change. Like, I have to change. I have to stop. I need to pull myself out. I need to believe truth. Because all this time people were telling me things, and I just didn't want to do it. And I was really being lazy, and I was like, I have to do it this time. And in that moment, in that movie theater, like, that changed my mind. Like, I made a conscious decision that I was going to change, and I did. And over the next weeks in January, like, I just had a few prayers, and I just realized, like, hey, like, I don't feel that weight anymore. Like, God healed me of that weight. And so ever since then, I've just been running with the freedom that God has given me, and like joining groups, and I have joy, and like I have purpose, and I have hope, and I don't feel that weight of depression on me anymore. And I look forward to everything that God has for me in my future.